Hey everybody, it's Aluna Michaels, Esoteric Astrologer, coming at you to talk about January of 2026. Sorry it's messy in my office, might be that way for a little bit. Those of you who know me know what's going on here. But okay, so thanks as always to the guys at Know Thyself Podcast. Thank you. Okay, so this might be kind of quick this month, but it's a lot to explain. There's a few things going on, but a lot of explanation behind it. Um, so, a stellium is when three planets or more are gathered together in the sky. So, what we're having this month in Capricorn and then even in Aquarius is the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars all close together. They're not exactly conjuncting the whole time, but they're kind of moving in range with each other. And the Sun has to deal with self-expression, kind of like your creativity, leadership, career things, your sense of vitality, and stuff like that. And then your Mercury has to do with your thinking and ideas, friendships, can be siblings, but it's your level of perceiving and thinking and stuff. Also self-expression because of speaking, writing, all that. Venus is romance, but also what you love in life in general, it could be finances, and abundance in general. And Mars is your energy level. It can be anger, but in the way it's moving, maybe when it's just with Mercury by itself, I'll talk about that later. But Mars is like the action to make things happen. And when we're saying, okay, at the beginning of the month when the sun's still in Capricorn, it can be very cliche about blank here for a second, New Year's resolutions. But since Capricorn is about goals and Mars is about like accomplishing them, and Mercury is like putting your mind to it, there's something about like a propelling forward. So, and then the fact that the stellium kind of continues through January gives you a good start if you do want to make some changes or goals with this month. Even if it was a different month, I'd say, yeah, we need to do this thing with the goals and stuff. But if it's about your health, fitness things, or financial things, or relationship goals, or self-growth, and all sorts of things you could put on a list and have maybe meditate about the best actions to take. I want to be healthier, whatever, more fit. Like, what's the best thing? Is it Pilates? Is it running? Is it whatever? And have, because of Capricorn being ruled by Saturn, have a real thing to do, like a actual plan. So it isn't just like, oh, this is just sort of, gonna happen. It's like, how is it happening? And Mars gives that momentum to carry it through and to keep it going. So even when the planets move into Aquarius later in the month, we think of Aquarius as being ruled by Uranus, but before we discovered Uranus, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So there's still that element with Aquarius, and of course, because it's also a fixed sign, of sticking with something. So the idea that your plan of the self-betterment or looking for the new job or whatever it is, like staying on track with these goals that are inspiring you. Because Mars, should have said that too, that Mars is about that sense of inspiration around the goals. So that is kind of cool. And if we want to look at the dates around that, the Sun and Venus exactly conjunct around the 8th or 9th of the month. That's when they're around 18 or 19 degrees, if any of you care about that. And then, well, the Sun is there too. I'm sorry, my notes. Sun, Venus, and Mars are all together there around the 8th or 9th. And then Mercury gets more in the picture, especially with Mars around the 16th. And that's where, just for thinking about other people, the Mars-Venus isn't so irritable, but Mercury-Venus can be that way. So just being aware of people maybe being like, overly clear about their ideas with Mercury-Mars, and just kind of like, oh, there's a little hot topic there. Or do you want to really deal with somebody when they're extra feisty? And that would be around the 16th or so. So that could be a time when you're maybe say, well, this might not be the best time to approach this. And because the whole month has that making changes and being open to the changes, but sometimes confrontations or people taking things wrong, that could be that one little blip in there with the Mercury conjuncting Venus around the 16th, right around that point in time, maybe a few days before, a few days after. But for your own self, it can be really good about encouraging yourself and, just checking in and with the goals you want to make. So again, that's going to continue through the end of the month, and I don't know if it's a little bit into February too. Kind of Mercury, Venus, they're kind of all sort of tracking together. Mars will sort of get out of that range later, but and I'm thinking next month, but I'll talk about it then. Oh no, yeah, Mercury's sorry, Mercury's gonna be a different sign. Put my glasses on and look better. Forget that. Mercury's gonna go retrograde next month, but we will not worry about that ever. But we can talk about it in February. Okay, so the other big news. Oh wait, let me say this first before the big news. Saturn sextile Uranus. This is kind of cool because the idea, again, of these planets being in Capricorn about sticking with the goals and having that future vision and being able to get the results you want. When Saturn is making a 60-degree angle to the planet Uranus, kind of all through January, they're pretty close together. And then because Uranus are close together, close in that 60-degree range, which is a sextile, we could say all of January that's happening. And then in February, Uranus, February 4th, is going to move direct. So Uranus is kind of slowing down and keeping in that range, and holding that together through the whole month. And because Uranus is slower, it's, Saturn likes to be slow paced, steady paced, and Uranus can be like, woo, but Uranus, sorry, I have like dust in my nose or these things around or dusty. I'm sorting through some stuff, but that as Uranus it can help Saturn to feel like you stay invigorated. Uranus is fresh ideas and feeling free, so you don't feel trapped in a discipline or something. And as Uranus can slowing down to turn direction, it's even more comfortable with like, yeah, we're in this rhythm. We like what we're doing. We can keep being persistent and consistent, with goals. So I think that the Uranus Saturn Uranus sextile is very helpful. So also through January, Saturn and Neptune, they're sort of starting to separate from this, and I'm sorry I didn't do a video in December. But Saturn and Neptune had been traveling together, both in Pisces, because they're both going to go into Aries. And that's the big news, is Neptune goes into Aries this month of January. Saturn will go in Valentine's Day. But they're both about to change signs. So they've been keeping pace. And that also can be, Neptune gives Saturn, like, Uranus gives it like fresh, cool ideas. And Neptune is like keeping the dream alive. Even though something is revealing itself over time, Neptune can help you be patient and, again, flexible within the schedule instead of rigid. So it helps Saturn to have Neptune around. But as Neptune goes into Aries, now we had Neptune in Aries last year. So because all the planets are retrograding and going direct and they move back and forth, the outer planets, when they're changing signs, they go into the sign and usually pull out because they move so slowly. They'll pull back into the end of the previous sign, right? So Neptune went into Aries. That was in, it was the very last day of March. So let's just say April of last year. And it stayed in Aries until like the third week of October, went back into Pisces. So we had a little taste of this. And Neptune changes signs once every 14 years. And so it's a big deal when an outer planet like that changes signs. Even Saturn, it's 2.5 years, and we'll talk about that next month, but it's kind of like, ooh, something new's happening. But when we get like into Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, it's like, wow, they've been in the sign for a while, So Neptune in Pisces, and not to say it's all bad, but after 14 years, it's like, enough of this, And when a planet changes signs, it's like, oh, right, this new sign. And keeping in mind that Neptune is not just going into a new sign, but it's going into a whole new zodiac cycle. And what's so interesting is we discovered Neptune when it was in Pisces in the 1880s, I think. I remember it's when they discovered anesthesia, which is really interesting because Neptune represents that being in a twilight space and, of course, compassion. I remember going to, I was living in New England, I went to the history of dentistry in Hartford, Connecticut, and it was scary. And then they talked about the guy who, oh, and this is actually very pertinent, the guy who invented uh, the anesthesia for help with dentistry originally. Was anesthesia or just, yeah, well, yeah, pretty sure it was the beginnings of anesthesia stuff. I can't remember if it was nitrous oxide, something where you're not feeling the pain, right? And Neptune is that idea of being distant from the pain, and feeling escapist can be a bad thing. But sometimes with Neptune, things get a little weird. And what was interesting about the guy who discovered the anesthesia, let's just say, he would test it on himself, and he started to have these mental problems. And he would go out onto the street and throw acid on women. He'd say, "Strumpet," it's a slut or whatever. And these fancy ladies, and they'd go, ah, and they'd have their faces burned with this sulfuric acid or something. And it was crazy. He'd go and attack them and whatever. Well, this became the roots of Robert Louis Stevenson. Oh my God, I'm such a literature person. Pretty sure he wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But that idea that this guy was a good guy, and then he weirded himself out on these testing things that were going to go help humanity, to be able to have surgeries without pain. But he suffered from the mental illness of over testing the substance. And then he became, Mr. Hyde, and was the terrible guy that threw the acid on the ladies. But of course, it went further in the book, right? But the idea of Neptune, where sometimes you don't know what reality is, this idea of Neptune in Pisces, because Neptune rules Pisces, it's like, okay, the past 14 years, there's been a lot of issues, let's say, things that Pisces represents, like, religion. I mean, there's been a lot of interesting things going on with different ways people are perceiving religion, getting away from the original message. If we're talking about Christianity, it's kind of like, wait, what? You're a South Park fan, what I'm talking about. But, Neptune also represents over-believing in somebody, turning your will, completely surrendering. And that can be wonderful kind of thing, but it can be cult-like, or people just getting swept up into misinformation, which is kind of like whoopsies. But there's also disinformation, because Neptune can represent out and out deception, and Pisces. And then it's double strength, let's say. And by the end of 14 years, it's like, uh-oh, we need to rebalance some of this. And, kind of like, what is real, what is not real? Like this kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing at the end. So let's get into Aries. Aries is like clear-headed. I woke up. I'm not drunk anymore. I'm not weirded out anymore. I can see this person's misleading me. I know it. Or this is a good thing. I know it. And I trust myself in my core. So there can be a lot of changes sort of globally or whatever, holistically in the universe when the planet is changing signs. And what I was saying about the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is we discovered Neptune at that time. And I was thinking it's interesting with the discovery of planets that there's often like a huge shift in human consciousness. And there was also what they called one of the Great Awakenings in the in the 1880s or so. And, it was a lot of spiritual opening and stuff like that. But anyways, the Neptune going into Aries, it's time for that. So Neptune and Pisces before, I might have said Neptune Aries. Sorry, my own Neptune and Pisces moment. So Neptune and Pisces was all the Great Awakening and the discovery of Neptune and all of that, and the anesthesia. And then we move into Neptune Aries. It's a whole nother story. And we are on a new path. It's a lot of fresh, good energy. So, and again, it's a whole zodiac cycle. So that's happening on January 26th. Yes. And it's not going to go, wait, I'm in May here. Hang on. It's not going to go back into Pisces. Yes, around the 26th. So that's a big deal. It's like totally in Aries now. And we're really enjoying, like, you can feel a lot more motivated to spirituality, your own spirituality, because sometimes Neptune and Pisces can be, I don't know, a little complacent or lazy or uninspired. It's like too much of a good thing where you feel kind of, I'll do it tomorrow. Whereas Neptune and Aries, like, I'm going to get into that meditation, or I'm going to do the yoga, or trying a new approach to things and re-inspiring yourself. So, so yeah, all that happens. And then next month I'll talk about Saturn going into Aries, and then they conjunct the Saturn and Neptune. So they've kind of been traveling near each other, but they have an actual conjunction in February. It's going to be interesting. So, so anyways, sorry, this idea of, I know I've told that story about the discovery of the anesthesia and the poor guy who found, discovered it. And he was like, oh gosh, I feel that way at the end of Neptune and Pisces. And I remember when I went there, there was a petition you could sign to get this guy on a stamp because he'd been sort of, history hadn't been kind to him in terms of throwing the sulfuric acid and all. But they were trying to say, hey, this guy contributed to human society by discovering, fairly pain-free surgery, and we need to honor him. And so I remember I signed the petition. But I'm an Aquarius, so sign it. Let the outsider have his stamp, right? But so anyways, a lot of people have said, boy, I feel like, I don't know which end is up, and I feel weird and surreal and strange. And it's like that Neptune at that final portion of Pisces for the final time, which we still had a little weirdness as it went in and out in 2025, but to say, okay, phew, I can see what's going on. I know what I want. I believe in myself. And again, that kind of goes along with the setting the goals and having that be when all the stellium I was talking about kind of dissipate, they go on their own way, not clinging together for, the four of them together, they start to separate out, that that the Neptune and Aries and even the Saturn Aries keeps that fire burning. So, okay. So hopefully stay with me through that. And if you want a session with me, 248-583-1663 or my website, alunamichaels.com. You can send through there. Best to do the texting. Or my email is aluna@alunamichaels.com. Also have a Gmail one too. But okay, well, thanks for being out there, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.